So over the last week or so, we've been getting a pretty unexpected batch of projectl news. The first things we'll talk about are a bit on the smaller side, but being as they come directly from the game's executive producer and FGC legend Tom Cannon, I figured they were probably worth mentioning. So first, from a sort of impromptu Q&A session on the projectl Discord server, Tom starts the conversation by stating there will not be any projectl spoilers. So all information stated has already, at least in his mind, been confirmed or shown off in some capacity within the dev videos or the written blogs. But with that, what might come as a surprise to some, Tom does actually reply to a sort of joke comment from user SwuM when he stated, "That's kind of hilarious that there is a possibility of you guys seeing our heated discussions about the existence of a block button," to which Tom plainly states, "I can confirm there is no block button." To you FGC vets, this probably doesn't come as a surprise. In the videos Ryan has put out there seems to be some cross-ups or left-right mix-ups showcased. But to me, just like the whole free-to-play news from a while back, it's something that we may have assumed was very likely to have been the case. But it's still nice to get official confirmation directly from the source that there is, in fact, no block button. It's the typical hold back to block that we all know and love. Which, if it was the opposite and they did have the block button, it definitely would have contributed to some people's opinions of this game being too simplified or is going to be more for newbies mentality. So personally, I'm really glad to see that that's not the case and we still have the added layer of cross-ups and some extra depth that comes with it. But speaking of the simplification and depth conversation, one of the controversial decisions that the game has shown off is the toned down single button special moves. But in a thread this time on the game's subreddit, Tom seemingly confirms user Bajimba's theory that there are at least going to be down motions for the game's super moves by simply replying "good eye" in the comments of said thread. Other fighting games have used these motions for special moves before, and to me this is more proof that projectl is taking heavy influence from games like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, as that game also had down inputs for the Dragon Punch shortcut for a few of the characters in the roster. So that might just be the game of choice when you're trying to practice these systems and gameplay style to be ready when projectl comes out, because this is not the first thing that seems like it is almost directly taken from Marvel Infinite, so kind of keep that in mind. Or another one being BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. That game has even more of the DNA that projectl seems to be going for. So again, the game's special moves may be that one button input, but if it turns out these down motions are for the level 1 supers, I wouldn't be surprised if the level 3s also have some different kind of motion input as well. I don't think we're going to get Dragon Punches. I don't think we're going to get like double quarter circles or full circles or anything crazy like that. My guess would probably be like a quarter circle forward for a level 3, kind of akin to something like Dragon Ball FighterZ, but I could be off on this one. But lastly, to kind of cap off the Discord conversation, Tom does make it very clear that not only are we not getting any official update from Riot anytime soon or around Evo Japan, but he also states at various times throughout the conversation things like the game is still very much in progress and we're sharing things way sooner than any other fighting game would because we really value the feedback we're getting from each update. So unfortunately, I think this continues to paint the picture of the best case scenario. We get maybe a small playable beta by the end of 2023, but that's like the best we can get, and more likely we're not going to get the full release of projectl until something like mid or even late 2024. So with the official Tom Cannon stuff out of the way, the real bulk of today's information comes from a very unexpected source, GamerBee's Twitter of all places. Now, I will say, take this with a grain of salt just because, like I said, this is such an unexpected source. It seems a little bit strange to me, but GamerBee is a well-known FGC veteran and Street Fighter pro. I have no reason to believe that he would be dishonest or make this sort of thing up, and actually it does seem like Riot themselves has allowed him to talk about his experience around the game and the presentation that they showed him. With that being established, GamerBee states that this information is coming from a banquet that Riot held that was actually located in Japan, which certainly tracks because it is actually Evo Japan right now. Tom Cannon himself, Sean Rivera have each talked about being there. Not to mention, I'm sure many other prominent FGC pros are present at that event, so I wouldn't be surprised if more people's accounts of their experience of this banquet do start to come out as the days go on. So jumping back to the actual meat of the information that we got, it looks like GamerBee was talking about the typical projectl aims to pass the fighting game genre into the next generation and increase the fighting game community's actual size. So we've seen that in things like they are trying to lower the skill floor and the input execution that comes with special moves and that kind of thing, but they still want the ceiling to be very high, that easy to learn, hard to master type of mentality. So nothing new there. we already know that that's kind of the mantra that projectl has been going with. Next up, he states something that we already anticipated, but again, another official confirmation. projectl will be a permanent version of a fighting game officially called a live service, which means there won't be a sequel, but instead there will be continuous updates. So flat out, they are following the League of Legends, Valorant live service model. The game will instead be consistently updated, upgraded, and kind of evolve as it goes throughout the lifespan of it. Comparable to something like Multiverses recently, and I do very much expect this to be a new model that a lot of other games follow suit with in the future. Game Review then details in the demo video that there was a move called Retreating Guard, which cancels backdash while in defense. If the opponent swings and misses, they can be countered by attacking from a further distance if they anticipate the Retreating Guard move. Sounds like more defensive mechanics, more things that we haven't seen quite yet, so it's not just going to be a burst. And if this Retreating Guard is separate than that push block or whatever we've seen showcased before, I'm sure we're going to get a full-on breakdown and reveal with whatever the next dev video is going to be. Next up, he details what seems to be the comboing system, or at least on a basic level of how things were shown off. Normal moves can be canceled into a jump chain combo or a ground chain combo that includes a launcher move, then a jump to continue the combo, which is similar to Marvel vs. Capcom. I mean, he even says it himself, sounds like some MVC stuff, light, medium, heavy, knock him up in the air, light, medium, heavy type of mentality, or ABC, however you want to call it. Again, this is pretty standard fare for tag games. And speaking of tag games, when calling for a character assistance during a combo, players can switch character indicated by a yellow flash, and the original character will exit the stage, allowing for a secondary character to enter. So this one sounds very much on brand for like a Dragon Ball FighterZ. You can definitely do that sort of thing after you've launched, switch directly into another character and just keep going into the combo quite easily, which I think they've already showcased that a little bit in the most recent dev video as well. Next up, he reiterates that in fact there will be 3 attack buttons for light, medium, and heavy attacks, along with other combination keys. And then next, something that's a little bit surprising to me that they didn't use this as a way to present this mentality, but there will not be any CC skills like League of Legends, but it will be presented in a different way like in animation. So we've actually seen Jinx zap somebody, and it shows them in a sort of stunned-like state. But flat out, this is a normal thing for fighting games. Their equivalent of CC is literally just hit stun. So if the hit stun is very high, that's basically like a stun anyway. The opponent can't really respond or do anything other than burst. They can't really press any buttons. So it's kind of the same mentality. It's just not actually going to be sold as flat out CC. It'll just be heavy hit stun by the sounds of it. And next up, a big one, the cooldown system in Rising Thunder will not appear in projectl because depriving players of their actions is in fact a bad thing. And that one's a little bit surprising just because that is a little bit of the identity that kind of made sense for Riot to make a fighting game around, was the fact that it had those single button inputs and it had those cooldown systems much like League of Legends, and maybe even the reason that they bought Radiant to actually make projectl to begin with. So it's interesting that they are getting away from that mentality, but I personally am glad they are, and it could have been something that was directly from feedback that players themselves just weren't liking the idea of cooldowns. Maybe this is something that they changed, but either way, it's not going to be present flat out. Another big shocker coming, there will in fact be a pro esports environment, and some may worry that official tournaments will displace community events. Therefore, there will be a limit on official tournaments and community tournaments that can use projectl to organize events. So a lot of people don't want something like a projectl world tour or only Riot official events to kind of take over. They want it to stay firmly rooted in the actual FGC. But personally, I don't think that this was ever a big concern. I mean, you're talking about two of the main people working on this game and fronting this game are two of the founders of Evo. So to me, there's no chance that they're not going to be involved in things like Evo and probably even Combo Breaker. For those of you who don't know, the director who has run Combo Breaker for a very long time, Rick, or the Hado, is now the general manager of Evo. So a lot of these events are very grassroots, intertwined, and it's always been a huge community effort. The FGC is a very strong community. They like to bring each other up. It's not usually something where they want to step on each other's toes or knock each other down. We usually all want to grow together, and it really does seem like projectl is going to try to continue that mentality. And frankly, I don't think Tony and Tom would have it any other way. Moving on, someone asked about the things that make opponents hate low height characters and whether Teemo will appear, and the official answer is that you guys are good at guessing, but not actually giving a direct answer. So it seems that they are confirming that Yordles are going to be in the game. I think we knew that that was probably going to be the case. And if we're completely honest, the poster child of Yordles is Teemo. It's probably going to be Teemo. I will reserve judgment until I see how he actually plays in the game, if that is the case. That's all I will say on the subject. Moving on, Riot's esports competitions are not famous for high prize money, but there are professional regions around the world where players can earn a salary to live on. Therefore, L hopes to make players become stars instead of simply giving high prize money, because star players can earn more money through endorsements or sponsorships. I mean, there are a lot of League of Legends content creators that are bigger than pro players, and frankly, it is a more lucrative side of the industry. Yes, there are absolutely players who can earn a living just playing, but I think the FGC is a great indicator of the majority of people who are really killing it in the FGC are honestly the content creators, and I think the players are more modest unless you are absolutely at the tippy top winning a lot of different tournaments. So I think it's good that Riot is recognizing this and kind of pushing out of, we want to get people's brands out there. We want people to be directly supported. You don't have to just win a tournament. You can be supported in other ways. It makes a lot of sense. That kind of is the modern methodology that the FGC has been moving towards anyway, and it's definitely something that esports and streaming and everything like that has been supporting for a very long time before that as well. He also states that L believes that rather than having big competitions at the beginning, they hope to first ensure that players are satisfied with the game and then focus on building an esports environment, which is phenomenal. Please do that. I've seen so many games where something like a virtual fighter, where the esports was literally announced before there was an announcement of a brand new game. So you don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. You really want to make sure that you have something that's worth celebrating, that people are very enthusiastic about. And then the best way to pay that off is celebrating at the highest level and then building out what your tournaments are going to look like once you're fully established. So I fully, wholeheartedly agree with this approach. I think this is absolutely the right decision. Next, back to gameplay. L hopes to create a game that players can identify from their actions, so there may be summoner skills for players to choose from. So if he's talking about summoner spells, that's definitely something I thought could be included in projectl. It sounds like they're not fully decided on that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of integration of summoner spells, even if it was only for select game modes. To me, that rings very similar to what Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite did with the Infinity Stone. So I definitely could see a reality where that does happen, but we'll just have to wait and find out. And then up next, he does confirm that both characters have to be KO'd to win, and each game will last at least 2 rounds. So glad to hear this. I did not want it to be the Tekken Tag style where if one character goes down, you just lose the game. Instead, it's the Marvel vs. Capcom, you win by taking out their entire team. And then next, speaking of the Marvel vs. Capcom side, it seems like the comeback system when only one character is left to be hit has not yet been decided whether to be made. Comeback mechanics can be very, very controversial. X Factor is insanely busted. Some people love it. A lot of people hate it. Dragon Ball FighterZ has something similar with the sparking mechanic. I don't think it's quite as egregious, but a lot of games have it, and I'm very curious to see if projectl is going to double down and do that as well. I wouldn't be surprised. I think it probably will happen, but my hope is that it's not quite as busted as something like an X Factor would be, that it's something relatively tame. But a lot of games really do have it. I do expect this to be present in one way or another by the end of this game's lifespan, for sure. Different regions will have different servers, so players close to the server will have better connections, unlike other fighting games that only use peer-to-peer. Good news, we want to have a good connection. If there's one thing I'm positive of in this game, though, it's going to be the netcode. It's going to be the connection. I think it's probably going to be the best that fighting games have ever had. And there is currently no consideration for a character leveling system like in LoL, but it may be added if players like it. So that one I'm a little bit interested by. One of the things I've seen people considering or maybe even hoping for is some sort of integration of a leveling or a progression system, whether that be through a battle pass or an XP system or some way of getting achievements to kind of show your progress and kind of get you addicted to the game a bit. So honestly, I thought that this was going to be in the game, but maybe it's going to turn out to be that you're just going to be worried about the ranked grind and trying to get to Diamond, Master, Challenger, that kind of mentality, and that's what you're going to strive for. But again, doesn't seem like it's fully defined yet. I guess we will wait and see on that front. L hopes to create a game where players can interact with each other in a conversational way rather than just characters being overly violent and causing the weaker side to be completely unable to act. Not really sure what this means. I don't know if they're just going to have emotes in game or if they're going to have some sort of social circle interaction thing akin to like an Arc Systems game. Maybe they will. Maybe you'll be able to chill out and do some of the stuff that Grand Blue Rising has been showcasing just to kind of break up the violence and aggression that comes with just beating the snot out of each other. Or when he said conversation, he probably probably just meant it as a metaphor for back and forth. I guess we will wait and see. Next, regarding combos, L hopes that players will be rewarded for difficult combos, but they do not want to make combos too long and make the losing side feel hopeless or uninterested. So this is a huge problem of Dragon Ball FighterZ. I think a lot of casual players or people who got into it a little bit later get very discouraged by the fact that they just get comboed for 30 to 40 seconds. And even a lot of other tag games have this stuff where you might get legitimately infinitely looped and just you're literally watching your character get beat up for an extended period of time. So it sounds like not only is this game going to have a burst where you can break out of a combo and give you kind of a second chance at bat, but also it seems like they want combos to be just shorter as a whole. So I think it's going to be a lot more simplified and a lot quicker, which I think we've kind of seen that in the gameplay, at least in the basic combos that they have shown off so far. Next, as a kind of 1-2, it states that competition organizers do not have to worry because projectl will be able to hold the game in the same event as any other fighting game. And additionally, players do not have to worry because becoming a professional projectl player will not prohibit them from playing other fighting games. So there's no sort of exclusivity contracts or anything like that that you have to worry about. One little asterisk I would add here is I would assume that this is also going to apply to commentators. So hopefully they're not going to try to like recruit James Chen and Sajam and Tasty Steve and all that kind of stuff and make them exclusively commentate for projectl if there is going to be an official Riot circuit type thing. I assume that's the case. They seem like they're kind of addressing that they don't want this exclusivity type of thing. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that this would extend to actual commentators as well. Then last but not least, they are working hard to coordinate with PlayStation and hope to create a fighting game with the same input lag across all platforms. So that would be phenomenal. As it stands right now, PS4 and its laggy input delay is kind of the tournament standard. So it would be nice if we are still going to be on the console gaming that everything feels and looks for the most part the same. This is also a kind of confirmation that of course the game is going to be on PlayStation. I would hope that that also means that it's going to be on things like the Xbox Series consoles, maybe even something like a Switch port or whatever future Nintendo console comes when we're talking about this game potentially coming out in like 2025 or whenever it drops. But it's definitely going to be at least on some consoles, probably at launch. And hopefully they're all going to function and play pretty similarly. That would be fantastic. But that pretty much concludes the GamerBee side of things and the news for now. A lot of stuff we could have safely assumed, plus a lot that I'm personally relieved to finally get some clarity on at the same time. But of course, I want to hear what you guys think down in the comments. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.